Hey guys, so we're gonna do a spirit talk. I'm gonna I'm gonna take on. I'm only laughing because I just been sitting there, tonight after a little nap and watching some videos. Now I've seen some of his videos before, but we're gonna talk about Jordan Peterson. Now, if some of you don't know who he is, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an introduction. I do not claim that I could possibly get, say, his personality and everything he stands for in one video. This would, oh God, it would take me a long time. And I would love to even have a little bit of a discussion with him one day to talk about some of his stuff because he's an interesting character. And it's almost kind of like, what is he? He's kind of this strange enigma who is very popular, especially became popular because of YouTube. And let me just pull up his Wikipedia to give you a little bit of an idea. I'm going to show you some snips that I've got on my phone, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm talking about him right now. Because especially with the climate of everything that's, going on, we got Roe, we got, a lot of LGBTQI rights, transgender, there's so much going on. And by the way, as I say that, I showed this on my profile. I got my Coach Pride purse, and I love it. I had to get it. Except one to support the community, but also I love the colors. I mean, you can it matches with this. It goes with everything. I love this. I love this. Okay, this is so amazing. Okay, so no, I just want to show it. But I seriously, I have a couple coaches, and I only get from the outlet because it's way cheaper. Check out the Coach outlet. But that purse is just to die for. I love it. So it's kind of funny. I just bought that, and I'm going to talk about this guy. Okay, there's a whole lot to unpack. But the reason why I'm talking about him, because yeah, there's certain things he definitely talks a lot. Kind of has his own kind of spiritual angle. But let me just get the wiki to kind of prep it. Now, his name is Jordan Burnt Peterson. Now, this is what's funny. He's born June 12th, 1962. He is born one day after my boyfriend. One day. And when I saw that, I just saw that a little bit ago, I went, oh, this explains some things. Okay, because I can, when it comes to even my own boyfriend, he's definitely, he's the man's man. Let's put it that way. He definitely is kind of a man's man. And I could definitely see if he watched some of his videos, he would probably feel some of this stuff because he definitely Jordan Peterson is definitely for kind of men's issues, and we'll talk about that and everything. And sometimes he says things that are pretty good and make sense, and I will talk about that. I may need to get a I almost have to do a pros and cons of the guy, but when I get into his cons, it's like he's really unlikable. Okay, but let's go and talk about him. It is very interesting because we talked a little bit about Teal Swan. On one end there could be some positives, but then when we get into the dark, it is kind of crazy and stuff. But yeah, he's a Canadian clinical psychologist, YouTube personality. This is really where he got, big. Just like kind of Teal Swan. It's kind of interesting. This is almost like her equal and opposite. Okay. And he's a professor emeritus of the University of Toronto. So he's from Canada, clearly. He began to receive widespread attention as a public intellectual in the late 2010s. They almost came out about the same time. See, there's something weird with this. And you know what's funny? I think him and Teal are both Geminis. Okay? So it's kind of weird. Okay, just saying, just saying. I look at things that sometimes they shouldn't connect, but they're serendipitous. Okay, that we got two people that are pretty well looked at. Spiritual, woman, kind of power, and then this man who's really taken on a prominent position. Especially that people are listening to. Okay, even on YouTube, coming out at about the same time, both Geminis, it's crazy. Okay, but anyway, let's get to it. On cultural and political issues, so he does often described as conservative. So it's real hard, to say that. Remember, he's kind of from Canada, so but he did kind of live over here for about maybe 6 years. Definitely a lot of conservatives like him. Okay, that is definitely that. Peterson has described himself as a classic British liberal and a traditionalist. He does seem to hold to some kind of traditional kind of values. his approach to things though, like Christianity, I definitely do not get. Looking at some of his stuff that's on his YouTube, because he approaches it, I'll talk about it a little bit. He seems to approach it a little bit more, with, kind of almost like it's almost like he approaches it a little bit like Joseph Campbell, but he's still got that kind of staunch traditionalist. He's a little more closed, with certain things, a little conservative, where Joseph Campbell was a little, wow, he was so amazing and stuff. He ain't quite that guy and stuff. If you've ever read any of Joseph Campbell's works or watch any of his lectures. Like, I remember a long time ago when I was real young, I found him on PBS and he was just talking. I just turned it on. I don't know what made me turn it on. And I just listened to him talk about mythology and I just was mesmerized. I could not take my eyes off the screen or stop listening to him. I could get up, go to the bathroom, nothing. The man was just incredible. The way he talked about mythology. He kind of, I feel he tries to do that when it comes to things like Christianity, the Bible, certain myths and things like that. Maybe even talking about Buddhism. He kind of explores things. And but he's definitely, he's got a very traditional view of things, and we're going to talk about that. But he's an interesting character to kind of discuss, and that's why I'm good at there. Also because there's a lot of influence he's having, and I feel as we get further in over the years, he's going to be someone people talk about. He's got books out now. Okay, so this is definitely somebody to keep an eye on. Okay, so let's kind of talk about, and see, this is what makes him a little different than T.L. Swan. He is educated. Born and raised in Alberta, Peterson obtained bachelor degrees in political science and psychology from University of Alberta and PhD, so he's a PhD, in clinical psychology from McGill University. After teaching and research at Harvard University, so he's had a little bit of Harvard, he returned to Canada in 1988 to permanently join the Faculty of Psychology, University of Toronto. In 1999, he published his first books, Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief, which became the basis for many of his subsequent lectures. So he's definitely one who, he almost reminds me a little bit of Judah Krishnamurti, which you would have to kind of look him up. But he's also a very fascinating character who back in the day did many sit-downs, lectures. And now this man, Judah Krishnamurti, was very big on total freedom, especially of the mind, of everything, of religion. And when he would have these one-on-one discussions with people, I know what he's trying to do, but he's not like these guys, okay? But when Judah Krishnamurti would have these one-on-one discussions, they were very incredible. But he wrote a book called Total Freedom. If you ever want to check it out, it's excellent. And he also was a big inspiration for Bruce Lee and a lot of his writings, even helping influence the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, which ended up being his martial arts philosophy. There was a little bit of him mixed in there, okay? And so I could wax this all day, so I don't want to bore you though. But we'll get to the juicy stuff in a sec. I promise. So yeah, so he the book combines psychology, mythology, religion, literature, philosophy, and neuroscience to analyze systems of belief and meaning. So I give him credit that he's really trying to learn, educate. This is an intelligent man. I do not feel he is ignorant. Just like even, T.L. Swan, I feel she's an intelligent person. They're both very intelligent, people and everything. But, but then he gets in areas that I'm like, that it's like, you need to get with the times, man. Okay. The flexibility is a challenge. I mean, on one hand, I understand some of the things he says about political correctness and getting offended, which I will get to that in a minute. But then he pushes it. Okay. All right. So in 2016, Peterson released a series of YouTube videos criticizing the Act to amend the Canadian Human Rights and the Criminal Code. I won't get into all that. He's definitely has some clashes with Trudeau. He's got some issues with the Canadian government. He's kind of rough. Okay, so but one of his big things, and we're going to talk about it. He argued there was with this bill certain things. He's got a real problem with certain things with gender identity. People, having pronouns. He does not like them. He's the transgender. He does not seem to understand it. He does not. He has his own kind of view. He kind of believes society, maybe liberals confusing people and this and that. He really does not like surgery. We're going to talk about that. Some of this is very, very recent. Okay. I mean, he argued that there was a bill in Canada. We'll just shorten it here. He argued that a bill would make use of certain gender pronouns. Compelled speech is what he calls it, and related this argument to a general critique of political correctness and identity politics. So see, he looks at this, that certain things, society, political things, especially, like he could call leftist up. He looks at that, he feels like, especially with children and everything, that it's influencing in a negative way. Okay, he's kind of got his own view, and he's very stuck on it. Okay, he subsequently received significant media coverage, and he just recently did. Okay, there we again, is attracting both support and criticism. So yeah, so some people, if I just want to be an understanding person, okay, he's 60 years old. Okay, and even if I look at my boyfriend, he's 60 years old. Clearly, they're just a day apart, which I think is so hysterical. I understand that people, especially men, okay, where women can, and I'm not trying to even generalize, my own gender, but we can be a little more gentle, accepting a bit of things, motherly, we can be a little like that. We've got that yin and everything, where, men, because of the thing about, being masculine and all that, they have a real problem with things. Okay. I understand, but, still, why are you threatened? Why? But other people do. Okay. Peterson's lectures and conversations, propagated mainly through YouTube and podcasts, soon gathered millions of views. And yeah, he's got a lot of views. By 2018, he had put his clinical practice and teaching duties on hold and published his second book, 12 Rules to Life, An Antidote to Chaos. I'll see if I think I can pull that, just a general list of those for you guys to kind of get an idea. Promoted with a world tour, became a bestseller in several countries. That same year, columnist David Brooks described Peterson as this is why I want to talk about him, the most influential public intellectual in the Western world. This is somebody, he's coming up over maybe the last, a little over a decade, kind of things, but he's been doing things, but, with YouTube and everything and social media, he's getting bigger, and he's going to get bigger and bigger. Okay. And he does a lot of interviews, and I will give him credit. He talks to almost anybody. I mean, he will interview with like maybe people that just have a real small YouTube presence to Dr. Oz. Okay, on a TV show. Joe Rogan has had him on. Of course, Joe Rogan has. And let's see, throughout 2019, 2020, Peterson's work was obstructed by health problems. Okay, so he had a little bit of, some health problems we're kind of talking about. And so there's a whole lot, but there's definitely some controversy with him. Now, let's look at let me see if I can pull up his 12 Rules to Life, because that can kind of give you an idea of kind of where he's at. And there's a whole lot to unpack, and I'll show you some of his stuff on my phone. Jordan Peterson 12 Rules to Life list. Hopefully I can. Let me see if I can just break it down.
Peterson 12 Rules for Life.
Okay, here we go.
A summary from the Guardian.
Okay, so this is kind of, okay, see if I could get a breakdown of it. And there's a whole bunch. Okay, so, okay, get that out of the way. Hold on. So just like just kind of a breakdown. He's got a whole book, and he probably goes into a big old thing. So his number 1, stand up straight with your shoulders straight. Okay? Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Okay? And that's, and there's a little thing here. The story of Garden Eden shows that we are all touched with original sin, but you have a choice. You can either seek heaven or be dragged down to hell. Yes, you have shameful, sinful nature. He's got some views there. But for God's sake, just make a bit of effort. He's definitely big on responsibility and making meaning of your life. That is a big thing, which is not bad. And stop waiting for other people to dig you out of your pitiful hole. That's kind of harsh. But let's see. Befriend people who want the best for you. Be friends with people who are supportive of you and things like that, who want the best for you. I think that's great. I think compare yourself to who you were yesterday. This is something I've always said myself. Not the useless person you are today. I don't know about that. What I normally say is, I always try to be better. I don't compare myself to other people. There's no point in doing that, and you shouldn't either. But I always kind of look back, am I a little bit better of a person today than I was yesterday? That's the way I word it. That's the way he apparently words it. Not the useless person you are today. Okay. Okay. And then he says, do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. Okay. All right. And let's see. Set your house in order before you criticize the world. Wait till you see how critical this one gets. That's funny. That's funny. Okay. Because you're about to see him go postal. Okay. About his recent issue, which we're going to talk about, which really is not funny, but it's like, for somebody who's supposed to be so educated and everything, which I do feel this is someone, this is somebody who's very well versed. I'll read. I think he's got a top 8 book list. He's very studied young. Carl Jung, who's very prominent, obviously, in the spiritual community. I have many of his, books, even on my shelf. I've definitely studied a lot. The shadow, we all know the shadow work. He acknowledges that. I even found, I was like, I'm curious, since he likes Jung, did he ever talk about tarot? Now, it was kind of funny. I actually did find him talk about it. He was sitting around with some people who briefly were kind of talking about tarot, and they were kind of talking about, as a form of divination, is it more psychological, this, that, and he had a few words to say on it. He said, that he felt, intuition, it could really kind of get it going. But he said what happens is if you're sitting in front of somebody, when they start giving certain cues, that could actually kind of lead on the reader, and then they follow those cues and start going with it. That's not necessarily wrong, but let me explain something. All that, because there could be some people who do that. Especially, a reader definitely can be influenced by certain, like, say if they're reading and they're saying things and then they get a certain expression, like, like that, or they may start talking. This is also one of the reasons why I like to read to this. I record a lot of my readings. I may go, it depends. Depending on what I'm doing, it can be 35, 40 minutes to an hour. And I don't have the person in front of me. I just kind of pull up maybe a photo of them on my phone, just sit there like that. And then I just talk and do my read. So the good thing about it is I can't be influenced by any kind of cues. I cannot ask them any kind of questions, which I actually feel is more helpful. That where some readers may have a hard time without doing that, it actually is better that I can't stop. Hey, by the way, though there are times, I've done that before, just maybe, am I on, just make sure, continue. But what I'm doing on video, I can't. So it's going to be, if everything hits for that person, they know that they couldn't have influenced anything I said. Okay, so I would love to talk to him about that and say, well, I know you say that, but then explain when I'm going on video and I do not have the person in front of me, just maybe their picture, how I can read, and then they can validate what I said. So tarot actually can be a really good tool of divination. So anyway, I don't want to go on big thing. Okay, so but it was interesting. I found that, and he actually has some pretty positive things to say about astrology. Set your house in order before you criticize the world. Oh, he does quite a bit of that. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And then he does kind of, here we go. See, this is another thing Teal and him kind of have in common. Life is suffering. The book of Genesis tells us that. There is no easy way around it. So quit looking for shortcuts and start reading Nietzsche. That's what he said. And Nietzsche is, now remember, he's kind of nihilism, and he definitely looked at some Buddhism, and I that's pretty prominent in many religions and philosophies. The way it can be, and one of the things it definitely coming into the human experience, I do personally feel that spirit really doesn't want us to suffer. But when we come to 3D Earth, we're going to fall into it. We're just going to. We're trying to work, our way, to kind of awaken, evolve, and all that, and definitely get beyond it. And there's, and, I'll inevitably do a big video about suffering and all that stuff, but definitely kind of making some meaning out of things, definitely. And kind of help each other along the way, kind of get, like learning to get past those points of suffering, help each other along the way. Absolutely. There's a whole lot and stuff. Because remember, one thing the Buddha was trying to find the answer, how to, get away from suffering. Okay, this is one of the big things. And so, yeah, and no, there is no easy way around it, of course. And then he says, 8, tell the truth or at least don't lie. What is it? I guess don't say anything at all, right? And then let's see what he says. To be honest, I'm scrabbling around for things, but my publishers tell me I need 12. By telling you the truth about this, I am an improved being, certainly better than you. He's just, he's just, I don't know, he's just being a goof. And so I think he tries to be humorous. And then, but still, he can be an SOB, and you'll see in a minute. Assume the person you are listening to knows something you don't. And then he kind of says here, just shut up, quit moaning, and listen to me. I know things you don't. So don't expect me to listen to you. That's not the way things work. I'm here to make you feel better about yourself by telling you things you already know in a way that make you feel clever. And then be precise in your speech. He definitely has he will say, and a lot of times when I look at these interviews, he likes to say, I choose my words carefully. Yeah. Confront the chaos of being, don't try to beat around the bush. Things are going to be terrible. Oedipus killed his dad. You may well kill yours. Get over it. Face up to the real horrors of the world. So, wow. Okay. Sounds nice. Do not bother children while they are skateboarding. I don't know why he puts that as a rule. So and I guess it's just kind of, he definitely says, yeah, there it is. Let boys do boy things and girls do girl things. He's very big on this. Okay. Nowhere in the Bible does God say anything about this trans nonsense. And we're going to talk about that. He has a real problem with anything trans. We're going to talk about that. And this is what makes him a real freaking problem. Okay. And then he says, there's nothing wrong with men having all the best jobs and women staying home and looking after the kids. Oh, they're traditionalist. Okay. And then he says, 12, pet a cat when you encounter one in the street. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's his 12 rules. He's obviously got a little sense of humor, a little strangeness. So that's a little bit of what. So yes, he's definitely studied some Carl Jung. He's definitely got, some bizarre things about men and women that if you watch some of his videos and you can handle it, it's very, it's some very bizarre stuff. But, it's kind of funny. Some people are like, oh, he's really profound, intelligent. And I do feel when he talks about certain things, like, especially certain philosophical or things, there is some intelligence there. But it's very much rooted. There's still, though, at that core, okay, is definitely some issues that one of the things he really sees, which I feel is kind of a big thing with him, which is another reason that he's making such headway with certain people, especially men, especially like men's groups, father groups, and things like that, is he definitely has a problem with, say, men being demasculinized. Okay, there is a thing with that. Like, he definitely was outspoken about the Amber Heard thing. Okay, I will, no problem. We all were, though. Okay, that's no problem there. I have no problem there going at that. We don't need women like that doing men like that in any way. Okay, that is totally, all that was just all bad. Okay, and I do understand a bit of, when it comes to this. Remember we talked about the yin and yang, and I've talked about that a little bit in some of my videos. Anytime if you go to some kind of extreme, if one tries to, oppress another or this or that, it's going to be chaos the way it is, no matter what. I don't feel that women should be totally demasculinizing men. And I'm talking about, say, hetero in relationship. Let me just, trying to be dominant or anything over someone, okay? And definitely not men. I mean, we had enough of that. There's always going to be some kind of flux and chaos. But I know we're trying to evolve. Okay? But really, when we're in balance, we can be good. We can actually be good when we're in balance and we're doing things and we're working together and we're in agreement. Just like when you see, people in relationships and marriages where there's a good balance, where no one is threatened or trying to necessarily one taking power over the other. Okay. It's it can be in balance and everything, and no matter what, whether the woman works or stays home, or the man works or maybe he stays home, or no, whatever the dynamic, when they're working together, like in a good team, in a good teamwork, and there's love and understanding, and everybody's gonna, just like when I do relationship reads, everybody's gonna have a little conflict. But is the majority of the relationship conflict, are you always fighting? Okay, then something's got to give. Maybe you just can't communicate. There are certain things with that. But when you've got, a good balance, and maybe you have that moment where have a kerfuffle. But do you say I'm sorry and give a kiss every night before bed? That's great if you could do that. That's awesome. Okay, so, but he's definitely uptight on some areas. So I know he's got this issue with this demasculinizing of men, that he takes issue with it. Okay, he's definitely takes issue with it. But he's also, when he gets into, like, say, transgender and things like that. He doesn't really, as far as homosexuality, I don't see a whole lot. It's the transgender where he really goes at it. Okay, where he really goes at it. That, with certain identification or changing gender, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't, I don't know if he doesn't understand it or he doesn't want to understand, but what I feel he is trying to throw down, in his thing, is he feels it's more kind of society, this woke society, as he puts it, where people kind of mock this woke society, that they're influencing and making people confused. Maybe upon growing up, maybe parents being too liberal, or and they don't know how to handle certain expressions of either boys being whatever, and girls being whatever. He's got some real funny views on it, but it's just not, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. And especially, he can't relate. I wish one of the things he would do, if he really wanted to educate himself, if I was going to sit there and talk to him, I would be like, instead of having discussions with maybe Joe Rogan and sort of, how about talking to some parents? He has to have somewhere, maybe, I would hope so, but talk to parents of children who are trans and their experiences, what they've seen as they watch their children evolve. And I'm sure that they've had to kind of figure out how to handle it, because I feel like, with the parents who are loving and who are trying to be accepting and want what's best for the child. Okay, my feel, is they're really gonna try to understand deeply, okay, their children and stuff, versus try, oh no, there's something going on, try to fix this, that, put them in therapy and all this stuff. Okay, but the ones that they want to be very loving, they do not want their child to feel pain, they do not want them to suffer, they definitely do not want them to feel unloved or unaccepted by their parents. I will tell you, it's hard enough in society, and that people have to deal with what they do. But if at home, if your parents, okay, with those you love, your parents, your siblings, whatever, if they still love you no matter what, it will make it easier for the child who grows up, becomes an adult, of being themselves, however they wish to identify, to be able to function, because at least at the core in that family there is love. It will help them. I'm not saying it's going to make life totally easy, but it will help them. That they can call mom, or maybe talk to dad, or things, if they've got that connection. I feel that's one of the most important things. And unfortunately, sadly, it doesn't always work that way. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it has not. But I'm definitely seeing, even on TikTok, I always talk about that, but I love it, but there's, parents, of children who are trans, who are talking, who are speaking up, trying to explain, some things, especially, especially so people will understand and have a little bit of education of what's going on. And we've got to understand also that just I know some things can seem more different because things are coming in the open. You remember a lot of times people hid for so long. Okay, but another thing he has an issue is the surgery, which we're almost there. Okay, surgery. When people are going and getting surgery this and surgery that, and changing things, he just, I know he's kind of got this God made you this way, and then, you're altering stuff. He's got a real hardcore issue, and this is what got him in trouble with Twitter over the last few days. Okay, which is crazy. Now I just want to say something. I'm gonna say it's kind of down low because they're in the other room. Okay, but my daughter, right now, her friends that are in the room visiting. One of them is trans, by the way, is in the other room right now, and then her other friend is gay. So definitely, my daughter. One of the things about it is, and we know, and we love her friends, okay, and everything, and so we know a little bit about it, especially close to home, even, what people can go through, how hard it is, and being accepted, in this world and everything. But yes, even just right now, okay, visiting, just a little hop, skip, and jump away, is her little friends. I say little friends because they're young to me. I always think I know they're not children, but I always do that with, my daughter. But yes, so, we need to be understanding, try to understand, embrace, maybe, if you want to talk and ask questions gently, to get some kind of education, understanding. And I feel he's got his mind so heavily made up about maybe, society and what it's done to people, and how it's affecting kids. They're growing up confused and all this. Now, I'm not going to say there's some people who are confused. Okay, absolutely. This is a very confusing world. Okay, so I'm not going to say that, and I definitely feel for young people, especially, when they get into middle school and teen years, things are very confusing. And, in this world, I feel for them. I feel for them. So anyone, really anyone, dealing with it, just thinking about God, high school was easier for me, but I think middle school was even worse. But anyway, you just got certain people, people have certain cliques, and certain things. You know how it all went, well, I was in the 80s, so yes, you had little cheerleaders, you had football players, you had stoners. We used to call them stoners. You had the little mods who were kind of like into the, things of, various, and, and I know, going in the 90s, you had alternatives, you had hip hop people, you had, okay, people kind of, they're trying to identify the, certain things influence, especially society, music, culture, and everything. It's, you make certain friends, everybody's kind of going through their thing, kind of figuring out who they are. And it takes time. It can take years. Some people never figure out who they are, okay? But we certainly hope, and it's one of the goals on the spiritual path is kind of get, be able to get to the true self. If I'm like, well, this is who I am. I finally figured it out after I went through all that craziness, and I was starting, do I fit in here, here, here? I feel for kids, oh, and don't forget the nerds, and don't forget the people who are smart, we call them nerds, and very intelligent, and they're the ones who go on and they're running CEO companies, and they're just kind of getting the last laugh when they got teased all the time. So many different, things that we all kind of go through. It's such a struggle, and it's so crazy. And then, of course, when we got to throw in, as we even begin it, but growing up and trying to figure out, God and religion, if we even have it at all, or maybe somebody believed in God and all of a sudden, now they don't believe in God, they're an atheist, or maybe they were a Christian and now they're a pagan, and so, we're all just trying to figure it out, figure out who we are, what is all this about. We're all trying to discover, and I'm sure he's walking his path, trying to figure some things out himself. Okay, but he's definitely, at 60 years old, he's kind of made up his mind on some things here, you know. But one of the things, in some things he says, like I said, if I was going to do a pros cons, I could understand a little bit if I'm trying to be an understanding spiritualist, rise above my own. I'm a woman and how I have certain kind of views, especially about love and acceptance. And I'm very big, and it's an important thing. Though I know do I accept everybody totally? It can be a little hard. Especially when I see Christian nationalism, I got a problem with that. I'm not going to lie to you. I do understand if somebody has a Christian faith and they're loving good, yes. But if they're going to be hurtful to people, there should be a do no harm type of thing here. Okay, I just like do no harm. What we don't need to go around hurting people. For no reason, unnecessarily, just because you don't like them, understand them, or they're different than you. How this is high school. This is high school, and these people are grown-ups. There are people running the country that are still in high school. Okay, and so we've got to learn to try to understand each other, kind of come to some common ground, try, to meet each other somewhere, in the middle, and have a spirit talk and kind of discuss some things. I do appreciate that he tries to discuss some things and listen, but, he's got some very strong views, and yes, he thinks he's smarter than a lot of people. He definitely does. Let's talk about Twitter. Let's get to it. Whew. So, the big thing that happened, and let me get it pulled up here, and I'm going to show you some of what he says. I probably won't show the whole thing because it's all saying the same damn thing, but I'll give a little bit of what happened, and where he's got in trouble. Hold on. Jordan Peterson and banned on Twitter. And it's just made huge news, and it's amazing. Because he's one of the other things to understand, he's very big on free speech, okay, which I'm for. I'm good with free speech. I want to be able to express myself, my views, just like you do, okay. But and I'm also another thing I'm in agreement with to a degree is one of the things on my path. Which especially with, the Toltec and Carlos Castaneda, I've talked about the books and I've read them, they're very old school. And it's kind of funny, I even saw somebody compare him to being the modern day Carlos Castaneda, which I found was kind of funny. And I feel like one of the reasons they do that is because one of the big things in the books, that his teacher Don Juan talks about is about not being offended. Okay, how everybody gets offended. And one of the big things, that Don Juan teaches Carlos when he meets him in the desert and does all these, amazing things. But he talks about how self-importance is man's greatest enemy. Okay, this is a big thing. It is, just how people kind of get this heightened sense of self-importance. This is the big one, okay, in the Toltec path. And this is the big one. Self-importance is man's greatest enemy. That ain't wrong. That ain't wrong. That maybe that I see myself more important than anybody, all of this stuff. Okay, lots of people have a big problem with self-importance. I'm in agreement with that. But one of the things also that even in my self-importance, there are times I am offended. Okay, that's offensive. Okay, and they can get a little, self-indignant about being offended. Okay, so and this is one of the big things is, on the path, because some of the techniques and things to learn is to not be offended. Okay, just, with certain things with words. It's almost like going back to the sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me anything. To kind of get past that being offended. This is one of the things, when I met the folks who were studying the path and everything, they did not get offended. And it's, maybe people be insulting, whatever, giving them a hard time. They don't get offended. They don't react to it. They're beyond it. Okay, so I understand a little bit of when he talks about people being offended. Matter of fact, let me find a quote. I think I've got maybe an exact quote. Jordan Peterson on being offended. I'm trying to find a quote. Yeah, and here's one little quote he says. In order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. He's definitely, there it is. And there's all kinds of YouTubes. Freedom of speech versus offensiveness. And he's a big thing, that certain people will act about, sometimes try to censor things because they find things offensive, but maybe it's not necessarily, I understand, because of that, that being offended thing. And, here we go. You're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can find this. It won't. Oh, let me look. Yeah, he definitely has a big thing about being. Okay, why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended? The reporter asked at a 22-minute mark of it. He really has a problem with this. And then he says, because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. He answered when he was in an interview with someone with the Daily Wire. You certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable. And then kind of a snip there. You're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell is going on. And that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me, and that's fine. More power to you as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so, and then let's see. So he said, you have got me. I'm trying to work through my head. It took a while. She said with a repetitive concession. So I understand. When it comes to freedom of speech versus what is offensive. This has been a big thing, especially with Trump. There was a huge thing. He could be very offensive, very offensive. But of course, when he got right dangerous, to where certain things with his speech were inciting things, that's going beyond just offending. That's going beyond just putting someone down. Okay, I mean we could still Trump could be offensive, but Hillary Clinton also called people a basket of deplorables. Okay, and people, it's kind of funny. People got offended, but then people were with pride. Okay, so I understand what he's saying, but it's one of the things is, why am I offended? This is sometimes we got to kind of stop. We can't always go around being offended. But then, okay, there is also certain things that can be very hateful. Okay, come across very hateful. And then on top of that, can incite things, even people to hurt people and do things very nasty. Okay, so it's where, I understand what he's trying to say, because it is part of my own, like spiritual upbringing, you could say, and things I learned, especially about the Toltec path, about, and try not being offended. And certain things, say freedom of speech or whatever, certain things we got to kind of, sometimes it can be self-important to act offended. It can be. But at the same time, and he did make a point. Hey, you're asking me tough questions, and I I gotta risk being offended. But you're coming to me, challenging me on things. Okay, I get that. But at the same time, he says some things that are really harsh. Now let's get to it. I know I've talked a lot. So the ban on Twitter. Let's get to it. Jordan Peterson and ban on Twitter. This is a big thing where he gets real controversial. And I'll see if I can pull up on Newsweek. Hold on. Okay, so here we go. This is from Newsweek. Jordan Peterson looks set to stay off Twitter for good. As he said, he would rather die than delete the tweet about Elliot Page that got his account suspended. Now, I don't even know this actor who was an actress, but apparently Elliot Page was formerly Ellen Page, an actress who is now an actor. Okay, and he made we're talking about being offended, but it was a pretty cute comment, and I don't know why he even threw it up there in the first place, why he had to get there. Last week, those close to Peterson revealed that Twitter had suspended his account, and he could get it back within 12 hours if he deleted a tweet which mentioned back when Pride was a sin. Okay, he was referring to, obviously, the Pride Month and everything, just like I showed my Pride purse, okay, and referenced the criminal physician who removed Ellen, quote, and that's kind of funny, it's my name, Page's breast. So they had, a surgical procedure where they had their breast removed, and they're identifying from Ellen Page to now Elliot Page. Okay, that, and really that's their business, okay? But Peterson has now spoken out against Twitter and addressed the remarks he made that got him banned from the platform. The Canadian social media personality posted a near 15-minute video to his Instagram and YouTube pages addressing the situation and doubling down on the original statement. Okay, and it says, in quote, the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that. Well, it's kind of funny. He called it a hateful tweet, okay? It's kind of funny he says that. Is that a Freudian slip? What was it that I said that caused such a fuss? What exactly was it that I said that resulted in the ban? Peterson asked. Now, I will tell you, I've seen worse. I've seen worse things people have said than what he said, but it's still not good. Okay, I'm just saying. As he went on to dissect the original tweet regarding Page, Peterson's daughter, Michaela, shared a screenshot of the original tweet and the message from Twitter that her father received. So he has his daughter here, and she's like, wow, at Jordan Peterson got a Twitter strike. No more Twitter until he deletes the tweet. Definitely not a free speech platform at the moment that she tags Elon Musk. So his daughter's all for it. And unfortunately, I can't blow it up here. Hopefully, oh my God. Oh, here it is. I can barely read it. So his exact tweet is this. Remember when pride was a sin and Ellen Page just had her breast removed by a criminal physician? And then he posted maybe a YouTube or something. And like I said, it's bad, but I've seen worse. Okay, I'm just saying. So Twitter, and they're just like, hey, he must have been reported. Somebody had to report it. And they said delete it, 12-hour ban. He refuses to delete it. He won't do it. In his response video, Peterson went through the Twitter terms at length, picking apart where they may have supposedly violated their rules and stuff. It is clearly a case that I did not promote violence against or threaten anyone with my missive, he said. So that leaves the arguably lesser sin of harass. Let's assume, since I wasn't informed that it was the crime, and further harassment on the basis of so-called gender identity, since Twitter did not do me the favor of actually specifying my crime. He vented his frustration at Twitter, demanding that they tell him exactly what rules he broke. What rules, you sons of bitches? Exactly, precisely. Because of such things matter when accusations start flying. And he picked apart the first of his statement, referencing a time when pride was a sin. I don't regard pride as a virtue. It has been classically regarded as a sin. Okay, so I know just because the Bible says some things about pride, okay, still, what do parents a lot of times say? Come on now. Is it say their kid, comes home and has an A on a paper. What do a lot of parents say? Son, I am so proud of you. You did a good job. I'm proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. Pride does not have to be a sin. It's, and he should know that. He should know that. And so people should be able to be proud of themselves. And one of the things us spirituals are really trying to get away from, okay, one of the things we're trying to teach, and get away is especially that feeling sinful and dirty, like being born with original sin and all these horrible things, that Christianity and things have tried to promote. And I know, while I understand Christianity has influenced heavily, Western world in so many different ways, it just because it has doesn't mean it's a good thing. Okay, and there are things we need to evolve from and get past. And so, when it comes to pride, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it can be a good thing. Okay, there are certain things like vanity. There are certain things like egoism. There's certainly things like self-importance, which I was talking about. But people, should be able to take pride in who they are. But yes, even as parents, what do we do? I am so proud of you. You did a good job. You cleaned up your room. Oh, good job. You ate all your food. Oh, you ate your vegetables. Good job. I'm proud of you. That's what us parents do. So if we're good parents, we do want to instill some pride in children. Okay, and even bosses, say you do a good job, maybe whatever is, whether it's a sales quota at your job or you had perfect attendance or something, it's good to hear from the boss. Good job this month. I'm real proud of you. All right, good work. Okay, come on, people need to have some kind of sense of pride. Okay, so he's got to be, but you know what he's doing? He's putting down the pride community like it's sinful what they're doing. He's just being ridiculous. But yes, people need to have some kind of pride in themselves. Okay, so I don't regard pride as a virtue. It's been classically regarded as a sin. I don't see that sexual orientation or sexual desire of any sort is something to celebrate or take pride in. And so what I say is merely a fact. Okay, so, certain things, especially, when it comes to trans or when it comes to homosexuality, things like that, well, it becomes, a certain thing of, identity, certain things that have to do with sex, okay, are not the whole of the whole thing. And I know he's got some things about genitalia, okay. I even just to kind of set aside this whole thing here. I was even watching an interview where he was having a discussion with somebody about kind of like men and women in the workplace, and he's kind of talking about how the guy is kind of talking about even how there can be sexual harassment in the workplace and certain things, and then he kind of goes on this little bit of rant how women wear high heels and it's sexualizing a woman, isn't it? It makes the calves look like this, and then he's talking about women wearing makeup, and it's like and this is a sexualizing, and it's like, well, this is something that has gone on for years. This goes way back to Cleopatra. This goes way back times, where women, wore makeup. And it's kind of a thing we do at this time. Does it have anything maybe to do with that, in the past and everything? Oh, go ahead, guys. Oh, yeah, let me, hold on. Don't miss out my video. All right, have a good one.
Bye, Ellen.
All right, bye-bye. Okay. Sorry about that. But, it's just, but one of the things, even, I guess little girls and even boys, nowadays, a lot of people love to wear makeup. Makeup's kind of become, it's kind of even a creative expression. It's an art. I like to color coordinate. I definitely, I look washed out without makeup on a video, so I'm going to put it on. But it's not, I'm in menopause now, and I don't care about that. It's not about I want to attract a man, I'm going to wear makeup. Okay, it's just there's so much more to it than just that. But I think he's kind of narrowing it. Well, that's why women wear makeup. It's sexual attraction. It's no, it's more than that. Just like a woman may want to spray perfume on herself, maybe just because she likes to smell, not necessarily that she's trying to draw you in, okay, and make you want her. Okay, she may just be spraying perfume on just because she likes to smell. Okay, so he's got some weird views, and maybe and yes, I'm not a fan of high heels myself. I haven't worn them in many, 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 many years. I do not like them, but women enjoy wearing high heels. They like the way they look, feel, walk around, and everything, and they feel attractive, and they can even be powerful. Stilettos can even be a powerful symbol, actually. Just saying. And nothing wrong with that. Let people do what they want. But he had this weird thing. He kind of went on. He's going on about makeup and the heels and all this. And I'm like, who Lord, Jordan? And so he will go on. He could have a very intelligent conversation, about maybe mythology or maybe certain views of the Bible or the Buddha, and that are kind of interesting. But then he gets very like almost juvenile when it comes to talking about sex or genitalia or women or trans. He's very weird about it. He's very weird. He's got this thing about that, and it's bizarre, and I know, and maybe it's the Gemini thing, and maybe it's because he's born a day after my boyfriend. Okay. So anyway, okay, so here we go. We'll just talk a little bit. He conceded that it's probably not the reason he was banned from Twitter, as far as that. He did acknowledge he was guilty of the appalling censorious crime of dead naming Elliot Page, who came out as transgender in December 2020 and was previously known as Ellen and had been known as Elliot ever since. And so, but yeah, and then I'm going to show you a little bit of it, but he definitely he keeps doing these weird little pronouns just to be kind of a jerk and everything, and he's getting, he gets real weird about it, and he's just not understanding. He really has a problem with the doctor that removes the breasts, and he starts talking about it's becoming a money-making industry and various things. He's really got, apparently Elliot Page, it says, has yet to address the situation publicly. Maybe they never will. Maybe they don't need to. Newsweek has contacted them and they're just not, talking about it. So this has got a whole lot of discussion going on and everything. And I definitely want, hit some issues. Why am I even talking about this guy? Like I said, this, just like that quote said, this is somebody who's becoming more and more influential. He's definitely got some spiritual. Then he's got some psychological. He also has a little bit of a motivational speaking, especially to the males. Okay, especially to men. It definitely appeals to conservatives, from anywhere from maybe a little moderate to even some very extreme. Okay, with some of the things that he says. Now, I'm not sure if you're curious, but as far as with Trump, I did look a little bit what he said about Trump. He's definitely not. I'm not getting a feel of any kind of diehard Trump, but he did make a comment. He's like, well, one thing about him, he didn't lead anybody into a ridiculous war, and he kind of talked about this is more of a businessman type of person and everything. He is right about that. That Trump did lead us into a war with anyone else, but he led us to a very big insurrection internally. Okay, so which luckily was thwarted, and we're still waiting for things to come. Okay, so it's almost on one end we would say yes, that is true, but also the war within he aggravated. He definitely made things, already things that are kind of tense within our country very, very worse. Okay, and the insurrection is something that happened, to an attack on the government. He didn't acknowledge that part. Like you need to acknowledge that part. Okay, what happened. That's kind of a big thing. He says a little more on that. You can always look up his stuff. But yeah, let me go ahead and show you what I got here to kind of talk about. And I already kind of hit on some of the points. And it's just okay. This is where he kind of talks about he's definitely got some issues. And like I said, he's been on Joe Rogan. He interviews with a lot of people. He definitely has issues with feminism, which, but yeah, he's really got a problem with genitalia. Okay, so let's talk about his Twitter ban. I'm gonna give him a little bit of a voice so you can see who I'm talking about. If you don't know who he is, and then those who know, you know. And look at that, he's got 5.21 million subscribers. And this got 293K likes. Okay, 2.8 million views 4 days ago. This video. Okay, so yeah, you need to know who he is. Here he is.
Hello, everyone. A few days ago, I penned an irritated tweet in response to one of the latest happenings on the increasingly heated culture war front.
I warn, if easily offended, you're not going to like this.
Actor named Elliot Page. I am employing this awkward and impossible naming style because it is now apparently mandatory and am probably doing it wrong nonetheless, as you're doing it wrong is the whole point of what is being made mandatory. But also, I'm trying to make a point. I've essentially been banned from Twitter as a consequence. I say banned, although technically I have been suspended. But the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question.
He calls
and I
it
would
hateful.
rather die than
I know
do
he
that.
means it.
And hopefully it will not come to that, although who the hell knows in these increasingly strange days. What was it that I said that caused such a fuss? And that fuss is just beginning. And even more importantly and complexly, what exactly was it that I said that resulted in the ban? Here's the tweet in question. Remember when pride was a sin? And Ellen Page just had her breasts removed by a criminal physician. Then a link to a story that detailed out the happenings. The response from Twitter, quote, violating our rules against hateful conduct. You may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. By clicking delete, you acknowledge that your tweet violated the Twitter rules. Delete. If you think we've made a mistake, submit an appeal to us. Please note that should you do so, your account will remain locked while we review your appeal. Let's take this apart. First, it is clearly the case that I did not promote violence against, or threaten anyone with my missive. So that leaves the arguably lesser sin of harass. Let's assume, since I wasn't informed, that that was the crime. And further, harassment on the basis of so-called gender identity, since Twitter did not do me the favor of actually specifying my crime, and there are many possibilities on that front. We unfortunately have to guess at why this has occurred, and that's actually a big problem in and of itself, and also indicative of the utter carelessness of the Twitter organization with regard to the propriety of its own censorial actions. I should at least know exactly what I did wrong if I am required to acknowledge that my tweet violated the Twitter rules. What rules, you sons of bitches? Exactly. Precisely. Because such things matter when the accusations start flying. So what did I say that might constitute harassment? Well, many things, hypothetically. Let's begin with, remember when pride was a sin? Although that is merely a factual statement, because under the old rules, applicable even a decade ago, pride was a sin and had been recognized as perhaps the cardinal sin for thousands of years previously. It still might be regarded as unacceptable to the woke authoritarian moralists who now insist, for example, that we celebrate Pride Month, not hour or day or week, but month, and who have literally called it Pride Month instead of LGBT plus month or
But he wants
whatever
men
else
to be
alphabet
proud.
acronym which is currently insisted upon
Like
as the
man,
only acceptable
masculine.
enlightened terminology. I don't regard pride as a virtue. It has been classically regarded as a sin. I don't see that sexual orientation or sexual desire of any sort is something to celebrate or to take pride in. And so what I said was merely a fact. Now, it's possible that I hurt someone's feelings because I pointed out that pride goes before, for example, a fall, but I don't care about that, would do it again. And also consider it my duty to warn those who are about to fall into a pit that the path they are on leads suddenly downhill. But that
Okay, so as you can see, that's him. And that's kind of a little bit, there's a whole lot more you can, but it's just about a 15-minute rant. So, he's clearly upset. Let's look at some of the comments on some of the things that people are saying. Let's see if we got. So, and I'm sure it's got a lot of mixed here, on here. There are people, he's kind of, someone commented, 2 lessons always remember from Jordan: don't follow stupid rules, never apologize for doing nothing wrong. And then somebody quoted Mark Twain: never argue with stupid people. They will drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. I think it's actually quoted, never argue with an idiot, but I could be wrong. And, there's all kinds, he's definitely got his supporters. And someone with the spine not to cave to the wokeism that plagues our social media. I personally have never been a Twitter account and probably never will. This video with a breath of fresh air. Thank you, Jordan. You rock. A lot of support and stuff. And I'm not on Twitter. I never got into it. I just I've never been a thing. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people that just support him, and it's just crazy. It's crazy, So this is the thing. This is a tough one. When I said that, now there was no reason. I really, I know this is an issue. He's got an issue with this stuff. Okay, but why even say it? Why even gotta bring this poor person out of it and then, and then start some shit? So he kind of does it to himself. Okay, he kind of does. And then he can throw a big thing, how he's kind of being persecuted and it's attack on freedom of speech and stuff like that. Okay, and And I know Twitter, is Twitter at the moment kind of rather liberal? I would probably say it is. I feel they're trying to balance things out, and they're really trying to cut down. But they're probably getting strict because of what happened with Trump. But let's remember, they gave Trump a lot of wiggle room to talk. Okay? And they tried that. So I feel like one of the things is, I kind of like, if I was like running Twitter and I was all these people, they gave, this is the president, and he's kind of, he says some things. Remember, they let him talk for a long time, have the floor, and then inevitably they saw kind of some things that happened. So I feel like they went from one thing where they're trying to let people speech, but they got, they got a whole lot of stuff. I can imagine managing the platform is not easy, but then they switched to another extreme. Okay, so, but I understand free speech and all that, and everything and the importance of it. But at the same time, it was, was it technically a violation? It didn't, I don't feel he was promoting, anything violent. But it's a little harassing, yeah. And it definitely could, spark something negative. Somebody who was supposed to be, if I was going to talk to him and I was going to say anything to this, I would kind of say like this to him. Okay, you're obviously, an educated person. There's no arguing with your credentials. Okay, you're a PhD, you're studying these things. And I would even go so far if I was going to talk to him, like, I see you, appreciating Young and Nishi. These are people I read too, on the spiritual path, and really kind of understanding, some things. And even though it's kind of funny, I appreciate that you look at all kinds of different angles, because even though you have this kind of, this appreciation of the Bible, well, let's talk about Nishi. Okay, you talk about him, that he's so great, but what did he say? Nishi and God is dead. Hold on, wait, Nishi and God is dead. God, let me see if I can get it up.
According to Wikipedia, God is dead is a widely quoted statement made by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, I'm sorry, I'm saying it wrong. I always say Nietzsche. My apologies. Okay, so there are so many quotes of him, but he is, Nietzsche is definitely not quite the, he's nihilist. He was not biblical whatsoever. And the funny thing, remember back in the day when I was like studying things and so forth, is that, there are actually a lot of Satanists who've liked his philosophy. And so let's kind of look at this. If I can, let's see, trying to find the full quote. Nietzsche was an atheist for his adult life, and so he didn't mean that there was a God who had actually died, but rather that our idea of one had. After the Enlightenment, the idea of a universe that was governed by physical laws and not by divine providence had become mainstream. Philosophy had shown that governments no longer need to be organized around the idea of a divine right to be legitimate, but rather by the consent of rationality of the governed. That large and consistent moral theories could exist without reference to God. This was a tremendous event. Europe no longer needed God as a source for all morality, value, or order of the universe. Philosophy and science were capable of doing that for us. This increasing secularization of thought in the West led the philosopher to realize that not only was God dead, but also that human beings had killed him with their scientific revolution, their desire to better understand the world. So this is somebody, he is said to read him as a philosopher. But then he talks fondly about the Bible. And he just went on a rant about pride being a sin. But yet he admires a philosopher, who was a pretty radical thinker. And one of his big things was, God is dead. So, see, that's the ironic thing. That's the very ironic thing. And it's kind of, here's kind of a funny thing about Nietzsche. After uttering his final words, Mutter, ich bin dumm, his final words were, "Mother, I am stupid." Nietzsche becomes mute and demented, cared for by his family until his death a decade later. And so this is his most famous statement. So it's yeah, so there is a lot of people, and yes, even, like Satanists and chaos magicians, even pagans and so forth, he makes this statement. So I find it very funny, that, and let me kind of say, I think it's one of his recommended books, Jordan Peterson and Nietzsche. Yeah, he's got a bunch of stuff. Jordan Peterson, Nietzsche's prediction of the modern society without God. But he's got his own kind of view on it, and he's definitely got some views. Jordan Peterson, Nietzsche quote one: "He whose life has a why can bear almost anyhow." Let's see, and that's one of his, part of his rules for life. So it's very, very interesting that he admires him when he was very different, okay, than what, say, the Christians would support. They wouldn't support him at all. They would see him as very dark. They would, oh my God, they wouldn't want this. So it's very interesting, but he still, he definitely has some very interesting quotes and things that he said, as a philosopher. And he could have, if he would have got a little further, he could have made a great Buddhist. I'm saying, if he would have just got a little bit further and everything. But it's just some very, very interesting stuff there, how he admires him as a philosopher, but yet, kind of looks at, and he has his way of looking at scripture, the way he does, and even talks about pride. It's kind of funny. It's very funny. And so anyway, so what can we kind of look and surmise, like what's coming even with this? Because like I said, he's definitely having an influence. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, we can definitely see for, the trans community, it's not. It's definitely not. I understand on one end, there could be some, for say men who are having a hard time with identity in the world. I do empathize with that. Dealing with, their own identity, what is to be a man, some are very confused and struggling with that. But, and women even, we're struggling with our identity. We're all kind of struggling with it, how to define ourselves. But yeah, here's a quote by Nietzsche. "But the worst enemy you can meet will always be yourself. You lie in wait for yourself in caverns and forests. Lonely one, you are going the way to yourself. And your way goes past yourself and past your 7 devils. You will be a heretic to yourself, and witch and soothsayer, and fool and doubter, and unholy one and villain. You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you become new if you had not first become ashes?" So see, this is, he says some very profound things. And I completely understand that. And your worst enemy is yourself. That is so true. That is one of the, even the Buddha, who really is Mara? And once Mara gets out of the way, who was Buddha facing? That on the road to enlightenment, what could he get past? Even his own ego, his own self, all that got in the way. We all got to face our shadows and our various things, our ways that we can get in our own way and everything. And even, and like I said, I know, Jordan Peterson, he's on his own spiritual walk. I feel the man is probably trying, but then he's rigid in some areas. And, and compassion. Well, let's talk about what is a virtue. Isn't compassion a virtue? Love and compassion a virtue? Okay, to try to understand. Empathy should be a virtue. If anything, without it, we're done as a society. I'm sorry, without empathy and compassion in society, we are done. We have to try to understand each other, love each other. Maybe we have a hard time accepting certain things, but can we even sit down, come to the table, and try to understand each other, a little bit, and everything. I can, if I just said, like I said, he's a 60-year-old man. He's got some rigid, he's confused. I feel he can be confused, and he's kind of looking through a lens, of a lot of his, intellectualism, some left brain thinking, even not leftist, but left brain thinking, that he needs, a little bit more compassion, for people, you really to understand what they're going through. I would like him to kind of look at, certain things, especially with those that are transgender who are struggling, especially with those who have been alive. This is a very big common thing, who have been kicked out of homes, who are living on the street homeless, those who are suffering. And, even though, yes, this may be, yep, we have to contend with suffering in this world, should we make it easier on people than add to it? Should we, we don't need to add to other people's suffering. One of the big things we're dealing with right now, that is so difficult in this world is, inflicting suffering on other people in ways that are unnecessary, and are cruel. We just, just like one of the things, stripping women's rights. And I know a whole pro-life movement, it says, but, the fetus shouldn't suffer. And then there are so many other arguments that are coming out. If you looked even at my certain video, a certain message even came out from the Spirit. What about the Native American children that suffered? What about them? Why are we as a humanity, and stuff, inflicting suffering on others, and everything, and yet, but what about when it's inflicted on you, and then all of a sudden it's a problem, right? We've got to stop hurting each other. And this is one thing, if I was going to sit down and have a conversation with him, I would be like, for someone who is maybe trying to educate and has a big influence on others, okay, and has, many people listening and paying attention to what he has to say, okay, that there's a lot of power there. And just like even the little Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And your words have power. They're planting seeds in people's minds. So let's, if you're struggling, or maybe you don't like this whole thing with transgender, let's try to, maybe engage in some conversations that are helpful and fruitful and not hurtful. Maybe you see this as a travesty, as a crime. Maybe you see this as a society gone amok and is confusing, people and everything. But maybe, if you really just kind of look in the mirror, maybe you'll see you're part of the problem. Okay? And I would also quote, and I've quoted this, if I was, as he looks into Bible scripture, let me go ahead and pull it. I've read it before. Bible scripture, see through a glass darkly. I would remind him of this one because this is a big one. 1 Corinthians 13:12. One of my favorites that I try to remind myself of, even though, like I said, I'm a pretty open spiritualist. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known. Okay, we're all seeing through a glass darkly. We have to, even some of the best readers on YouTube, okay, even some of the most awakened people, we are still having to contend with that glass for a little while. Okay, for a little while. And I know he wants to come on, he's got it, he's awake and everything, but he needs to acknowledge that just like me, just like others, he also is facing that glass, and he's seeing through it too. So I just, this could be a moment, when we talk about pride, like I said, if I was going to have that conversation with Jordan Peterson, I'd be like, aren't you kind of taking a proud stance at, I'd rather die than delete this tweet? Isn't that you exhibiting some pride? I'm too proud to delete this tweet because my words, I shouldn't freaking have to. Okay? You're taking pride, You're being proud. You're being a little arrogant about it. Not only are you being a little proud and a little arrogant about it, you're going on a very big platform and get your say. And you are all entitled to have your say. And if you want to start a big thing with Twitter and free speech and all that, more power to you. But you're being proudful. You're prideful. You are. You're too proud to delete it. Just for a moment, when somebody kind of calls you out, I'm going, you went a little too far. And I know you like free speech and all that stuff. And I know you feel maybe even a little offended. Maybe you're feeling a little offended that you were being accused of harassing or promoting something, very negative or hateful. Okay. And so maybe you're the one feeling offended. Maybe you're feeling too proud to delete and just say, you know what, to keep the peace and maybe be on this platform so I can still talk to people. Maybe I shouldn't have said it. Maybe I shouldn't have picked on this person. Okay. And isn't one of the big things, we got a problem, definitely in this country. Okay. We've got a problem with people bullying people. In schools, we hate this. Poor little kids coming home and traumatized because they're being picked on, bullied for all kinds of things, for whether it's their weight, whether it's, their identity, whether it's, how attractive they are, what clothes they wear, or maybe for no reason at all, just whenever they start a thing. Okay? And so why be the bully on the playground? What popped in your mind that you had to say what you had to say? Okay? So you're being a little too proud to maybe just say, you know what, maybe I should just delete and say, I'll just hell with it. Just wipe it out. Nobody had known about it even. It didn't have to be a thing. Or maybe you just delete it, I'm going to say, or I'm still going to, speak, and then I'll go on YouTube and then I'll talk about it. But to sit there and be, I'd rather die than delete it. Are you serious? Put your money where your mouth is. You really? Really? You that's crazy. That's crazy. If you're willing to die over something stupid like that, you must not value your life very much. And like I said, I understand free speech. I understand. I know we want to be able to speak and be heard, and that's one of the beauty things. We're going to have differing opinions, and sometimes when we come out there, we can kind of have discussions and all that. But you're being proud. You're being prideful, and that's why you won't delete. It is your pride. It is your pride. And you're a little offended that you got called out for something. You got the, like that, and you don't like it. You don't like it. Okay? So, let me read it again before I head out soon. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face now I know in part, but then shall I know, even also as I am known. That's one of the big things. That's one of the big things that we've got to own up to and understand, especially, is that, we don't have the whole thing here, and everything, the whole story. But, while I could sit there as a spiritualist and try to empathize and understand where he's coming from and why, versus condemn, which I'm really not going to condemn totally. No, it's not right. No, but I'm not going to go, he's a son of a bitch and he's a racist. I'm going to go, I don't think that's exactly the problem. Okay. I feel like there's just, there's some certain fundamental, this is part of his education and his rearing and things like that. And people are entitled to their views, but, we have to, we if we do not become a society that has empathy and compassion for other people, okay, and that are different than us, okay, if we can't get there, we're doomed. We're doomed. Okay, we've got to change. We've got to change. We got to be better. So I would say, Jordan Peterson, be better. Learn from the experience and be better. Okay, and hey, we've all said things that aren't nice. We've all done things, and I completely understand about this being offended, and sometimes people get offended over stupid things. I completely understand. It's part of the Carlos Castaneda, and you probably read, self-importance is man's greatest enemy. Okay, I understand that, but you got to be better. You got to be better. I hope you enjoyed this, and like I said, if you want to check it out, he's got million YouTubes. He's been popping up on my suggested for ever. Always something. So check it out.